Part 10. Home at last. Why does my head hurt so much? Lan Wangji wondered. Then he realized this wasn't the first time he had felt this way. I'm home, I made it, he thought. Suddenly he realized there was something on his chest, and a hand holding his. Weighing! This time it really was Wei Wuxian. He could feel it. He opened his eyes and saw a mass of tangled black hair. Yes, it was Wei Wuxian. His heart sang. But something was wrong. Wei Wuxian felt way too light. He pushed back the tangled mass of hair and gasped. Wei Wuxian's eyes were sunken in, his cheekbones were hollow, his lips were cracked, and his skin was dull. He gently rolled Wei Wuxian off of him so he could have a better look. Wei Wuxian's robes hung loosely from his emaciated frame. How could this happen in 1 year? Someone was approaching. Lan Wangji listened intently. It was Zhou Jun. Wangji, you're awake, Zhou Jun greeted him. Lan Wangji got up and bowed to his brother, who bowed back. Zhou Jun placed the tray he was carrying by the bed. This one is for you, he handed Lan Wangji an herbal mix. That one is for Wei Wuxian. I'll have to go get you a meal. I didn't know you were awake. Is that all there is for him? Lan Wangji asked in horror, staring at the tiny bowl of kanji. He won't even finish that, Zhou Jun said. Zhou Jun moved to the sitting room and Wangji followed him carrying his herbs. He quickly drank the mixture, then asked, how did his condition deteriorate like that in a year? A year? You think you were gone for a year? Zhou Jun looked alarmed. How long was I gone? 13 years. No. Lan Wangji doubled over in pain as he remembered the pain he went through during the 16 years Wei Wuxian was dead. Wondering if, and when he would return. 13 years? No, that was impossible. What happened to him? After a year he started going out looking for you. He came back every year on the anniversary of your disappearance to release a lantern with a rabbit drawn on it. He told us it was the same drawing as the lantern you released together when you first met at 15. Every year he wished for your return. Every year he started drinking more to try and ease the pain of your loss. At some point he stopped eating. Last year Sijue convinced him to stay. He was afraid Wei Wuxian wouldn't last another year on the road. Sijue suggested that if he stayed here and followed Lan clan rules you might return. Sijue didn't really believe this, but it seemed the only way to keep him alive in case you did return. Before releasing the lantern on the 13th anniversary of your departure, Wei Wuxian told me that it wasn't until after you were gone that he realized how much he loved you and needed you. After releasing the lantern, Wei Wuxian remained kneeling on the ground for several hours, refusing to move. Suddenly you reappeared, looking like that. Lan Wangji was sobbing. He hadn't cried like this since the day Wei Wuxian had thrown himself off the cliff at Nightless City, kept thinking about his last words to Wei Wuxian and how hurt he must have been carrying those words for 13 years. Zhou Jun stared at his brother. Why did you leave? He finally asked. Lan Wangji shook his head, struggling to speak. Zhou Jun saw the pain and confusion in his brother's face. He wasn't going to get anything more out of him, but he had to ask, where is your headband? Where is Baiken? Why are you dressed like that? Lan Wangji shook his head again, silently begging his brother to stop asking questions. Zhou Jun nodded. I'll let Sijue know you are awake and do not want to be disturbed. He comes in the evenings. If you need anything, leave a note with the tray. Zhou Jun turned to leave. Brother, thank you for taking care of him. Lan Wangji managed to say. Zhou Jun turned and bowed to him. Lan Wangji bowed back, and Zhou Lan Wangji walked over to the bed and sat on the edge. He gently propped Wei Wuxian up, then stroked his cheek with his finger. After a few minutes, Wei Wuxian opened his eyes. They were dull and lifeless, but the moment he saw Lan Wangji, his face lit up. You're back, he croaked. Lan Zhan, I'm sorry, please. Lan Wangji gently kissed him to stop him from speaking and said, I love you, and I'll never leave you. Now drink your medicine. He carefully spooned the herbal mix into Wei Wuxian while Wei Wuxian stared at him adoringly. Now eat. Wei Wuxian tried, but after a few mouthfuls he complained he couldn't eat any more. He was too full. I can't, Wei Wuxian groaned, then he panicked. Please don't leave me, I'll eat, I promise I'll eat. Lan Wangji knew that if he pushed too hard it would all come back up. I'm not leaving, just one more bite. Wei Wuxian took one more bite then rolled over and fell asleep. Lan Wangji ate the last few spoonsful. He wasn't sure when his last meal was. He sat for a few minutes trying to organize his thoughts and form an action plan. His notes were gone, but the phone. He checked his pocket. It was there. The battery had run down to 75%. He quickly turned it off to save power. He would have to transcribe everything before the battery ran out. Next, he drew a bath and set out fresh clothes for himself and Wei Wuxian. While they were in the bath, Zhu Jun had returned with another tray. Lan Wangji picked at the food. His head was still hurting. He thought of Xiao Zhan. "Thank you for your help, my friend," he whispered. Then he crawled into bed and closed his eyes. Wei Wuxian instinctively rolled on top of him as if his weight would hold Lan Wangji down and stop him from leaving again. After waking up screaming several times, Xiao Zhan had explained the concepts of trauma to him. Lan Wangji knew Wei Wuxian was traumatized, just as he had been all those years ago when he lost Wei Wuxian. "I'm sorry, Wei Ying. I'll make it up to you," he promised his sleeping husband. Lan Wangji woke up a few hours later. It was almost time for the evening meal, and he knew Si Jue would be there soon. His head still hurt. He sat up carefully, sliding Wei Wuxian off him, and started to absent-mindedly detangle his hair. It looked like it hadn't been combed in a very long time. He heard Si Jue knock but chose not to open the door. He knew the knock was just a request. He couldn't handle more talking. A minute later, Si Jue left. Lan Wangji continued to work on Wei Wuxian's hair. This would take weeks, but there was no rush. When he felt Wei Wuxian stir, he got up to bring in the tray, gulped down his medicine first, then brought back Wei Wuxian's. Wei Wuxian's face lit up when he saw him. "Lan Zhan, I'm sorry. Shu, I'm here. I love you, and I will never leave you. Now drink your medicine," Lan Wangji said, wondering how many times he would have to repeat this before Wei Wuxian stopped stressing every time he woke up. This time he got Wei Wuxian to eat one more spoonful than he had in the last meal. It wasn't much, but it was progress. "I missed you," Wei Wuxian pouted. "I missed you too, I'm sorry." Lan Wangji climbed back into bed and cradled Wei Wuxian in his arms. Next, he emptied all his spiritual energy into Wei Wuxian, knowing this would help him heal. His spiritual power was slowly returning to normal now that he was back in his world. They both fell asleep quickly. The next morning, Lan Wangji improvised his training using techniques that did not require a sword. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than nothing. He slipped back inside when he heard Zhu Jun approaching. He wasn't ready to talk yet. After breakfast and a bath, he looked around for writing materials. He left a note asking for more paper. He had a lot to write. He wrote until he ran out of paper. Then he turned the phone off and went to check on Wei Wuxian, who was still sleeping, so he worked on detangling his hair. It was oddly relaxing, almost like a meditation. For the next week, Lan Wangji followed the same patterns, transcribing from the phone, detangling Wei Wuxian's hair, bathing Wei Wuxian, feeding Wei Wuxian, and draining his spiritual energy into him as soon as it replenished. After a week, Wei Wuxian was looking significantly better. He was still painfully thin, but his eyes were slightly less sunken, his skin had a glow to it again. His cracked lips had healed, and his eyes were as bright as before. There was a sharp knock at the door. Lan Wangji hesitated. He didn't know who it was. Another sharp knock. Then another. Lan Wangji decided to open the door. It was the physician. "Don't have all day, sit down," the physician said. A few minutes later he said, "You're fine. No need to continue the medicine." He walked over to the bed to check on Wei Wuxian. "Slight improvement," he finally said, "but still at high risk." "High risk for what?" "Full liver failure," the doctor said. "I'll see myself out. Busy schedule." Lan Wangji stared at Wei Wuxian in horror. Liver failure.